Luke Skywalker's daring mission to the haunted Eye of Palpatine, Leia and Han investigating the disappearance of the Jedi, R2-D2 frickin' dies, and Children of the Jedi, the book where all of this happens, is regarded by many fans as one of the worst books in the history of Star Wars publishing. But looking at it now, is it really that bad? Well, having read it, it depends on what you define as bad, because Star Wars has had bad books before, trust me. Children of the Jedi was published in a very dense time for Star Wars books. After Heir to the Empire's success, things really kicked into gear. It was published in the middle of the Corellian trilogy's publishing, and not even a year after the previous novel in the timeline, Champions of the Force. There was no shortage of Star Wars on page when Children of the Jedi was released. Things were generally being told out of order and without too much large-scale narrative cohesion, but definitely a lot of small-scale references to other novels and little bits of continuity thanks to the author's friendships and cooperation. This book is, in particular, really good at that kind of thing, and it clearly takes place in the same galaxy as the other books of the era, but it tells its own disconnected story. You see, Children of the Jedi is part of an unofficial trilogy dubbed the Callista trilogy thanks to the character Callista Masana/Ming being present in the 3 novels that take place back to back. Before we dive into the story, let's get some details out of the way. In Children of the Jedi, it's 12 ABY. Leia is now the new Chief of State of the New Republic, but it doesn't really seem like it based on her actions. In the same way, Jason, Jaina, and Anakin are around, but are quickly written out of the story to refocus on a story that isn't necessarily nailed to this specific time period. Luke's Jedi Temple on Yavin is also referenced, but never visited, so this book could truly have happened in one of like 10 years of the timeline. Altogether, this makes the main players conveniently Luke, Leia, Han, Chewbacca, R2, and 3PO. Film characters, all of them. To me, this felt a little contrived and disappointing, especially because it's following the Jedi Academy trilogy, which featured countless non-film characters as points of view alongside our OT heroes. But the side characters in Children of the Jedi are where the main point of continuity from that trilogy lies, as the 2 most important secondary characters are students at Luke's academy, but we'll get to them later. Children of the Jedi has an A-plot and a B-plot, spurred on by an old accomplice of Han's crazily approaching the trio on Ithor, rambling about Jedi children hidden down a well on the planet Belsavis. The A-plot then follows Luke, 3PO, and his 2 students attempting to stop a quote-unquote battle moon, a big asteroid with thrusters and guns, from the Imperial era that has been reactivated, resuming its mission of destroying an old Jedi outpost and hiding place. The B-plot is Leia, Han, Chewie, and R2 investigating the outpost on Belsavis. The battle moon on its way to destroy it is known as the Eye of Palpatine, and it was officially commissioned to destroy the Belsavis base, where a group of Jedi survivors called the Children of the Jedi lived after surviving Order 66. On the way to Belsavis, the Eye of Palpatine was originally supposed to pick up stormtroopers stationed on specific worlds' garrisons, but because the Empire is now long gone and those garrisons are no longer active, it just picked up a bunch of aliens on each of those worlds. Countless types, but of course it's the 90s, so there are Tuskens, Jawas, and Gamorreans. Luke and the rest of the heroes on the Eye of Palpatine spend a lot of their time having to deal with alien antics on board for what feels like 200 pages. Though during this time, Luke finds a lightsaber, hinting at the true mystery of the battle moon. The adventures on the Eye of Palpatine are a really good look into Luke's psyche, and his attitude towards his role as Jedi, as a leader, and as a person in general. But also present in this plot are the most philosophically interesting characters in the book. The 2 student side characters, Cray Mingla and Nikos Mar, are on board the Eye of Palpatine with Luke too, and contribute a lot to the book's themes. You see, long before the events of the book, and this is all established just in dialogue and internal monologue, so completely off screen, Cray and Nikos were lovers. That is, until Nikos died of a rare, painful, paralyzing disease. And as Nikos and Cray were artificial intelligence scientists at the famous Magrodi Institute, Cray Mingla implemented Nikos Mar's memories into a droid that looks identical to his previous body. Think Guri from Shadows of the Empire. And that droid is who Nikos Mar is in this novel. It's fascinating how Cray spends a lot of time in this book coming to terms with the fact that her boyfriend is truly dead. The love of her life is gone, even though a droid replica of him is still physically with her. There's a somewhat cold undercurrent to their scenes and Nikos' characterization that always reveals that he really isn't there anymore. Meanwhile, in the other plot on Belsavis, Leia and co are seeking out the Children of the Jedi while dealing with the underworld and an evil R2-D2 who has been told to be evil by Irek Ismarin. the child of the Emperor's old concubine and former Emperor's hand, Roganda Ismarin. Yes, this book goes there. You see, Irek has the ability to influence the minds of droids through the Force, something rather unique in Star Wars, through the implementation of a sub-electronic converter into his brain. He's being trained by his mother as a Dark Jedi to eventually become a new Vader. There is truly nothing new under the sun. This book also heavily leans into Leia as part of a community of ancient royal houses, interplaying with some unique Senex Juvex sector nobility lore from West End games. Han and Chewie have a little sewer adventure, and like all of the Hambly Star Wars stories it seems, there are a lot of bugs involved. Back in the sterile yet still Gamorrean-infested hallways of the Eye of Palpatine, Luke begins to hear a voice in his mind, and detects a powerful Force user in the form of a computer consciousness named Callista. It's eventually revealed that Callista was a member of the group known as the Altizian Jedi, a subgroup created through a retcon that was made because Callista was a pre-Empire Jedi in this book who was openly in a relationship with another Jedi. A lot of this was rectified by Karen Traviss bringing Callista into some Clone Wars era books. It turns out Callista's master, Jyn Altis, had a different Jedi philosophy than that of the Order based on Coruscant, and believed that Jedi being in relationships was okay. On a mission to destroy the Eye of Palpatine decades earlier, Callista sacrificed herself to stop the Battle Moon, saving the Jedi on Belsavis while fusing her consciousness with the computer, stranding it in the Moonflower Nebula. But the reason it's back ties to the Han and Leia plot, because Irek reactivated it, starting this whole mess. It turns out Roganda Ismarin, Irek's mother, was a youngling under Jedi Master Plet, who led the Children of the Jedi. The Empire found out about their hiding place, Plet's Well, which is the well that Han's crazy buddy was talking about, and programmed the Eye of Palpatine to destroy it. As mentioned before, Jedi Callista Masana and her lover Gaith stopped it, as Masana's spirit entered the computer where Luke found it all those years later. Roganda was still captured by the Empire though, and became part of Imperial High Society, becoming one of the Emperor's concubines. Through an affair with Imperial Court member Sarsev Quest, she became pregnant with Irek, while also becoming another Emperor's hand. She returned to Belsavis after Palpatine's death and began arranging to regroup the Empire's forces under her control, using the Eye of Palpatine, which she would control through Irek. Eventually, after some political maneuvering, Leia escapes from Roganda's captivity and stops the Ismarins from getting a hold of the Eye of Palpatine, because Luke's damage done to the computer prevented Irek from controlling it. Irek and Roganda escape into the night, and the Battle Moon is destroyed, an incredibly injured Luke escaping, separately from his two students. During the mission, as Luke experienced visions of Callista and communicated with the computer-bound Jedi in his dreams, Luke actually fell in love with Callista, the two bonding over their status as Jedi and their connections to the Force and each other. And during the climactic end of the book, Cray Mingla actually gives up her body to Callista, as she desires more greatly to be with Nikos in the Force than to continue living. Just as Callista did decades earlier, Cray now sacrifices herself, but this time giving the spirit of Callista the body of Cray. Callista Ming, named after Mingla in her new body, begins her future with Luke. In a surprising way, Children of the Jedi interacts with somber, interesting themes of humanity and what makes someone human, real, and even useful. All of this mixed with how the novel ponders the Force in ways that are different from almost any other Star Wars book that I've read, mainly through Nikos and Callista, as both are in some way robotic and in some way human, while also intersecting with Luke with his robotic hand and identity in the Force, and Irek, who's bridging the gap between Force users and technology, the Force and droids. On board the Eye of Palpatine, Luke falls deeply in love with Callista through visions and dreams of her, despite her never really being physically present outside of his mind and in the Force. Meanwhile, diametrically opposed, the body of Nikos Mar is standing right there, physically appearing as the same man's face. But Cray just can't believe it's really him deep down, because in the Force and personality-wise, it's not. Even though it has his memory and his voice, she can just tell. There's something about his essence that's missing. At the end of the novel, two people need to work together to shut down the Eye of Palpatine's central computer, and Nikos and Cray do it. Cray allows herself to die and see her true lover again, allowing Callista to have her body, quote-unquote, reuniting Luke and Callista in the physical world, and Cray and Nikos in the spiritual one. This is emphasized even more as Callista emerges from an escape pod, symbolically reborn, and Luke and her finally embrace as he invites her to the Yavin Temple. They're genuinely in love, and it's very sweet to read about Luke head over heels for his computer GF, falling for the beauty of her spirit and soul. And this is just one example of an element of the story that I absolutely love. But the way this book is written at times is dreadful. Reading it, I would find my eyes skipping paragraphs or skipping from quote to try to get the book to move faster and less confusingly. Maybe that's just me, but I think it's a shame because conceptually, as I've elaborated on more and more, so much of this story is fascinating. There are so many things I love about it, but it's just so difficult to read and understand at points. It's super conflicting to me because Barbara Hambly's writing is creative and beautiful, poetic, flowery, and at times just stunning, and somehow simultaneously sluggish and odd, and sometimes for all the same reasons. And it becomes even more complicated because the book shifts between visions, dreams, and real life, sometimes without telling you. Another big part of the book that ties into the themes of consciousness, computers, and personhood is the fact that the aliens on board the Eye of Palpatine are brainwashed by the computer's old AI to think they're stormtroopers after they were picked up. So much of this manifests in pointless Gamorrean infighting and drama, but it still contributes thematically, but not as entertainingly. I think Barbara Hambly just really likes Gamorreans. I mean, she defined a lot of their culture after all, but that thematic but not fun thing is kind of the best way to describe how this book struggles. Its ideas are highbrow, smart, and interesting, but it oftentimes struggles to make itself easy or even entertaining to read. So a lot of those positives are only apparent looking back, and you don't feel them at all while you're actually reading it. This book also has so many weird, original ideas it sets up that only appear in Barbara Hambly's Star Wars work. Several droid models, locations, societal concepts, and aliens only appear here, and it's fascinating to me. Its own little literature corner of the galaxy. Irek and Roganda are pretty interesting characters here, but what's crazy to me is that they actually break this mold, and do come back to play a role in the new Jedi Order books, with a grown-up Irek holed up on Coruscant even after the Yuuzhan Vong invasion. Irek is this iconic design. And in canon storytelling, Nikos and Roganda's names are inscribed on the wall of the Path's base on Mapuzo in the Kenobi series, soft canonizing them and the Children of the Jedi, a similar concept to the Path. One of the lesser parts of this book is that Han and Leia don't really have too much to do, but you still spend a lot of time with them. They explore Belsavis, which is somewhat interesting in that it's an ice planet with warm patches from geysers that are covered in glass domes to hold in the heat, but it's nothing like the Han and Leia plot in The Empire Strikes Back, which it really feels like this book is trying to emulate in more ways than one. Children of the Jedi is my favorite Star Wars book. I can safely say that, with the only other contenders really being Hambly's other book, Planet of Twilight, and Matthew Stover's New Jedi Order Traitor, of course. But Children of the Jedi does something different, and I can't help but appreciate its uniqueness. It interacts with the Force in such a deeply spiritual way that I find very enticing, and the Force permeates everything about the book, which is something that I really like in Star Wars stories. Children of the Jedi feels mystical to me in a way that Star Wars isn't always. It leans more into the fantasy elements of the saga while still maintaining the sci-fi of it all. I mean, the Eye of Palpatine is basically a dungeon, and the Gamorreans are pretty much orcs, but at the same time, it's so deeply science fiction, with artificial intelligences, mental programming, weapons of mass destruction built into asteroids, and of course, nebulas. It blends the two, science fiction and fantasy, into a perfect melodramatic space opera that I can't help but love. It feels feudal and futuristic, with all of the usual charm of the 90s Star Wars EU. So after all, was this book actually the worst Star Wars book that I've read? I would say, in a few ways, yes, but it's still chock full of absolutely fascinating concepts. Themes that are uniquely explored here and not really anywhere else in the saga. This is my favorite Star Wars book. I love Irek, Callista, Nikos, Krey, and Belsavis, no matter how boringly they're written, and I love Children of the Jedi. It's a gorgeous and central part of what Star Wars is to me. Thank you for joining me on this journey. My reading recommendation for today is, do I really need to say it? Experience the pain and the wonder of Children of the Jedi by Barbara Hambly. Or even better, listen to the abridged audiobook. It's free on Spotify and it trims a lot of fat. I have it on cassette and can safely say that the abridgment is actually really solid.